story has a happy ever after. And after this story, there's an after party.
So here's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Do you remember seeing Hollywood Undead with me?
Yes.
And they're the two opening bands. We didn't know any of their songs, but we were able to sing along anyway.
Yeah.
Because we were able to guess the chord progressions.
Yeah.
That's what this episode felt like.
I don't think a truer thing has ever been spoken. Yeah, we can definitely predict what was going to happen in this, a lot of it.
Yeah.
But there are some yucks.
There were.
There are some bad wigs.
Ah, that fringe.
Oh, God.
Folks, I'm Sam Logston.
I'm Amanda Pierce.
This is Happy Ever After Party, and we were watching episode 6, The Shepherd.
Yep.
As it's called. The name says everything you need to know about it.
I'm not going to make another Jesus reference. The other one got a little strange with that.
No, because... Okay. So, because this episode's really boring, this is something I'm going to mention. I talk about mythology. I talk about folklore. Not just fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
I consider all religions to be mythical and folklore-ish. That includes Christianity.
I'm keeping my mouth shut because my mom asked if she could watch these episodes recently. So I'm just going to go, at all of this.
Well, it's not being dismissive of religion, but I like the storytelling aspects of religion, so I think when it comes across, that's something I'm not going to shy away from.
Yeah, and it was straight up something I just found in Google and thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and Disney has been known to be very Judeo-Christian centric, even if it's not directly Jesus-y. Yeah. So, if we come across it, it's not meant as offense. It's because we're nerds and we like to read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
So, how are we breaking this down? I'm trying to figure out which one was more boring.
I mean, the Storybrooke one can be summed up in a couple of sentences. It's John Doe, whose real name James, I guess. Is still in the real world.
In the Storybrooke world, it's David.
Okay, whatever. So he wakes up. He's trying to figure out his life. He wants to get with Mary Margaret, but his wife keeps on pushing him to get back with her. Yeah.
It's really hard talking about this one because nothing fucking happens.
He wants to meet up with Mary Margaret at the bridge and figure out, like, if they should be together or something. He breaks into the school.
Okay, let's put a pin in this. Because we'll get back to it.
And then he finds that fucking windmill, and then he kind of remembers his past, and then he goes back to his wife. And that's pretty much all that happens. Oh, and Regina and his wife admit they're friends.
Okay, so you sounded like you were having a stroke explaining that plot. So for people who don't actually follow along, this episode kind of felt like it was lulling you because it was soap opera-y. If you've ever seen any romantic comedy in your life, the Storybrooke events that happen are pretty generic.
Soap opera would imply entertaining.
Well, remember, there are 2 jokes.
There are 2 jokes. And was
the very
third in the story? No, there were 3 jokes.
No, somebody got stabbed and I laughed. That was not a joke.
Emma got 1.
Yes.
Emma got 2.
Uh-huh.
Mary Margaret got 1 at the very end from you.
Yeah, she did.
I didn't laugh, but you did, so that counts.
I did just because I related to it.
Okay, so joke number 1 was at the top of it. Mary Margaret is frustrated and scrubbing a pot, and Emma goes,
You better take it easy on that Brillo pad or it might press charges. That's a good joke.
And Sam laughed, and I looked up from my phone for a second.
Yeah.
Because I've already seen this episode a couple of times.
This was my first time seeing it in years.
Yeah, I've seen it So I didn't very much look up from my phone.
So yeah, that got a chuckle out of me. Later on.
Yeah, the later on was Emma discovers the affair between Regina and McDreamy.
The one interesting thing that happens in the story,
she hits him in the stomach with something. I forget what it was.
We see somebody climbing out of Regina's house
because McDreamy makes her take night patrol, bribes her with a bear claw.
Yes, and okay, if you know that your deputy is going to be doing night patrolling.
Oh, he says he's volunteering at a dog shelter, which kind of made me giggle later on when he's like, I do volunteer at a dog shelter.
Oh my god.
She sees someone sneaking out of Regina's house and smacks him, and it's Jamie Dornan. And
again,
she's
you
like,
knew that your deputy was doing night patrol. You think you'd be a little bit stealthier.
Yeah, especially creeping out of her arch nemesis' house. But she's like, is there something you want to tell me? And he's like, yes, I do work at a dog shelter. And that was kind of a little laugh.
And the joke was that he wanted to sneak out of the window because he doesn't want Henry to know about the affair. And Emma goes, I wish I was Henry right now.
Yeah, God, I wish I was Henry right now.
I'm like, okay. Show. I don't like Emma much more, but I do respect her.
Can we get feedbacks or comments if those were just Stockholm Syndrome laughs or were those actually funny?
I have been so desensitized by how bland this show is that anything that resembles a joke is going to get a reaction.
The last
out of me.
one wasn't funny. The last line of the show made you giggle, and
it made
I was
me
like,
giggle.
That's not funny.
It wasn't that it was funny. It was that Mary Margaret is understandably upset after being led on by David into thinking that, oh, he's going to leave his wife for me. No, he's not. So she's crying.
She views Whale as an acceptable alternative.
Dr. Whale, who was staring at Ruby's ass and not her back in episode 2, she is talking to him. And he's like, can I buy you a drink? And after a very long pause, she's like, you can buy me too.
You can buy me too. In her very earnest way.
But she was pissed off.
Yeah, she was.
You can buy me too.
Yeah.
And that made me laugh just because it's honestly something that I would say to somebody if I was that upset and they offered me a beverage.
I've never been offered a beverage.
Wait, I've offered you beverages.
Yeah.
Or does hot chocolate and cinnamon not count anymore?
Hot chocolate and cinnamon does not count. I made that at home. You gave me a root beer, which is also very good. Yeah. Which I'll also allow.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Should we jump to Fantasyland? Because that was a little bit more interesting. At least something happened.
Something happened, and I also want to point something out in regards to Fantasy World and effects.
Mm-hmm.
This episode was released in December of 2011.
Okay.
November 2011 was when Skyrim was released.
Okay.
So a month before, the world had access to some of the most beautiful backgrounds put to video games, and basically a testament to what you're able to do with computer graphics in terms of the way things look.
Okay.
And then we have this episode.
Yeah, but they're also working on limited time and TV budget, which
I understand that. I get that. And I specifically mentioned Skyrim because there's a scene, and I promise we'll talk about the plot eventually. I just stopped caring. But they're in a dragon's lair and they have to go up a mountain.
Yeah.
And the way that was set up was very reminiscent of Skyrim. Mm-hmm. It looked like a set of Skyrim.
In reference to the dragon, this is ABC. This is not HBO. We have to fix...
But boy, does it want to be.
We have to fix last episode, because you said 2008, and I said, I thought it was earlier in 2011, and I was right. That Game of Thrones came out, and it probably had ended by the point this aired, which means you saw itty-bitty baby dragons.
Yes,
so,
that is correct.
Trying to compare ABC's budget to HBO's dragon budget is
or Bethesda's, for that matter.
is kind of unfair to ABC. Their effects are laughable, but TV wasn't really a big thing yet. Like, the golden age of TV that they talk about going on now, it's not really a thing that yet affected ABC. They didn't have to yet compete with Netflix and Amazon and Hulu original series.
This was the start of it, though.
Yeah.
This was, like, right on the cusp. So even though they couldn't afford to necessarily compete with those things, they definitely had the aesthetic in mind.
They definitely wanted to compete with it, but wanted on a dollar store budget.
Yeah, they wanted Once Upon a Time to be their answer to Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the fact that it takes place in a fantasy world and you can say, oh, cool, we have access to all of these titles that we don't really have to pay royalties for. Mm-hmm. With that budget, you can do a lot of things.
And they could kind of go hog wild with properties they essentially created, i.e. Jiminy Cricket in the last episode.
Very much so, and Snow White.
Yeah.
And, crap, we actually have to talk about this episode.
Okay, let's talk about Fantasyland.
Okay.
You want me to do it? You want you to do it?
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna
drink some cinnamon hot chocolate.
Okay. In a nutshell, we see how Prince Charming was actually the twin brother of a baby that was born and raised a prince. The Prince Charming that we know, James, grew up on a farm as a shepherd. He is approached by Rumpelstiltskin because his brother died. His brother died of hubris. That was the other thing that made me laugh out loud. It wasn't a joke, but it was very entertaining to me.
Yeah, his father wants his son to kill James. Not our James, but another James. His twin brother, James. OG James. How about that? OG James is supposed to kill a dragon for King Midas, who is a cheap Kenneth Branagh knockoff.
Spamlet.
Yeah, Spamlet. And his father, the king, is a cheap Anthony Hopkins knockoff from a la Silence of the Lambs. But
I'm trying to think of a good nickname for him because he has very ostentatious outfits.
You continue to think.
Hannibal
Fleekter.
Hannibal Fleekter?
Like on fleek?
Mm-hmm.
Hannibal
Lecter. Okay.
So he gets killed by hubris because he's trying to prove how big and strong he is, and he gets stabbed.
Yeah, just killed by hubris is fine.
That was funny.
Yeah, killed by hubris.
He also says, next time make sure I'm dead, to the big guy while they're fighting.
And he does. Irony.
He doesn't, because he gets stabbed through the chest.
He didn't make sure that the Kurgan was dead, so the Kurgan
made
sure he was dead.
Bargain basement Kurgan here.
Why
couldn't they not get Mr. Krabs?
I have no idea.
They don't have Clancy money?
No.
They have to have Clancy money. He'll do anything.
All the clout in that kingdom goes into the CGI backgrounds that are completely needless. Again, we had Skyrim and,
Clancy Brown may have competed with Robert Carlyle for chewing scenery in this episode, though, so I can respect that they didn't buy him.
Robert Carlyle was so enjoyable in this because he's the one who gave the king the OG James in the first place.
Yeah.
So when OG James gets stabbed, being Rumpelstiltskin, he's like, I know, I'm going to make another deal with you.
Yes.
I am going to give you his twin brother. Oh, did I not mention he had his twin brother? And, God, you see him in the sunlight for, the first time, and, you can really appreciate how good he looks. The makeup
the
that
practical
Robert
effects
Carlyle...
on him isn't bad.
No.
They have glitter skin, though, which is weird on camera, because glitter is a strange thing.
Yeah.
And it can look like dirt or flecks of dust if it's not shot right, and if you're not actually moving while you're being filmed.
Yeah.
It's an issue with photography as well if you put glitter on your face.
And that's why he has a green undertone to it. It's not just straight up gold.
Yeah.
It's sort of like an olive is what it ends up being.
Yeah, he definitely looks like very olive froggy skinned.
Which There's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm. I got to that episode. I'm cool
I'm
with it.
so sorry.
But, yeah, this is coming from someone who wears glitter on their face a lot. And used to be photographed a lot. That it looks muddy and weird when he's not actually moving. It looks kind of cool when he's moving.
It also doesn't look right if the lighting is off.
Yeah.
Like, if he's not by a fireplace or in sun, you can't really
It's the same thing. You need the light to move off of it for the effect. Otherwise, it looks like he has kind of dust on his face.
I think that's also one of the reasons why he gesticulates the way he does.
Yeah,
because it's constantly, like,
that's probably a good point. Yeah, that was probably an acting choice from Robbie.
Yeah, because, you know, he's a good actor.
In a not great... He's fine. He's fine in this show. I like him in this show. I just wish he had better material. But...
He's playing a role he deserves, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, if you agreed to be on board with this show and bringing enthusiasm, you get to be Mr. Gold.
He's bringing 110%. Good job, Robbie Carlyle.
He's making up for everybody else's 75% effort.
Yeah. I just really wish he would someone. Oh, yeah, I put that in there so you would bleep it again. You know it.
I know.
Your knowing smile. So,
you know, we talk about Hannibal Lecter, and that triggered it.
Mm-hmm. I'm triggered. And hungry.
Same.
But,
okay,
so...
I'm sorry we keep getting sidetracked.
It's just not very interesting.
Boring.
We're more entertained by each other.
So...
Robbie finds the farm boy and says, hey, if you want your mom to live... you gotta go fight this Driggy Dragon.
Yeah.
I cannot talk at all right now.
I would just... Robert Carlyle finds him, says his mom's life is going to improve if he goes ahead and slays the dragon. Because keep in mind, somehow, even though he was maybe, like, 50 feet away, King Midas somehow missed OG James getting stabbed.
Yeah.
And he didn't notice.
He was, like...
So this whole
3 yards away.
This whole thing could have been resolved
with peripheral vision.
Yes. There's more to nitpick here.
There's another thing I kind of want to nitpick before we get further, because the reason that the James we know and love, the James we know and tolerate,
the James we know,
yeah, with the bad weave, the reason that he decides to go and fight the dragon is because Robert Carlyle is like, your mom will never want for anything, and she'll be fine and get to keep the farm. But the reason she traded his twin brother to begin with 20 whatever years ago was to save the farm. How bad is this woman at finances if you need to sacrifice 2 children to save your farm twice? You need to watch your money. She needs a good accountant. I don't know what they're doing, that they only have, like, 1 sheep. But
it's a hilarious sheep.
It's a cute sheep.
It makes him laugh.
I loved the hell out of that sheep.
The sheep was probably the second best actor in this episode next to Robert Carlyle.
And then not Clancy Brown.
And Spamlet.
But, so he goes to fight the dragon, and everyone's like, just stay back, don't fight.
And they keep on reminding him, oh, did you know my twin brother? Oh, yeah, he was brave. We liked him. Stay the fuck
like
back.
You, asshole.
Several burnt corpses later, and the sudden ability to use the sword, he does in fact manage to decapitate
bloodlessly.
He did bloodlessly manage to decapitate a dragon.
With the golden sword that Midas goldified.
Mm-hmm.
Which I only say because gold is a very soft metal, and I don't think it would be very efficient at cutting dragons.
Oh, wait! There was one more joke we missed. That it wasn't a good joke, it was god-awful, and I laughed because somebody had to write it.
Okay. When
OG James kills the Kurgan, before Midas walks away, he turns that sword into gold.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, you'll forgive me if I don't shake your hand.
And Sam just goes,
What an asshole! And they all start laughing, and I'm like,
oh my god, I don't know.
I'm happy you got stabbed.
He got yucks. I mean,
yeah.
But, yeah, so Midas turned that sword into gold, and I'm like, that's a soft metal. That's not going to be very efficient at cutting dragons. I guess it depends on the
really
carrot
soft
of
dragon.
It was a soft dragon.
Yes.
It was a chonky dragon.
It was fluffy.
It was a squish dragon. That dragon was lean and mean, and it got caught between two rocks. Like, it wasn't
was
a smart
skinny.
dragon.
It was a very dumb, skinny dragon.
It literally got foiled by the geography right outside its home. Like, oh no, two rocks. I are too big to fit for two rocks, and then slicey.
So I'm going to wrap this up because we've stuck a lot of pins in this already.
Oh, well, the only thing left in this episode is Midas gives new James his daughter.
Yeah.
That's really the last thing that happens.
Midas gets James that we know his daughter's hand in marriage, and we get to a scene that's from the third episode. It's the beginning of the third episode.
Hannibal Fleekter says, "You're on the road to true love."
Yeah.
Get it? He's on the road to meet Snow White.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to marry Midas's daughter, but to meet Abigail was her name?
Abigail.
Yeah.
Okay, so clearly we didn't actually care too much about the things that happened in here. There are some bits of imagery that I found to be really interesting, though. Mm-hmm. Namely, in the real world, there's a scene where David is going to meet Mary Margaret to speak with her, and he ends up going into Mr. Gold's shop.
Yeah.
We once again see the Nightmare Fuel marionettes, but we also see a mobile that has glass unicorns
That
on
I
it.
want.
I want that too.
But it was over Emma's crib.
Yes.
As a baby.
And I also can't help but think whenever he was looking at it, it made me think of Tennessee Williams, The Glass Menagerie.
Yeah, okay.
And the unicorn was the one that gets broken in the end.
Mm-hmm.
As like a very bizarre coming of age story.
Yeah.
So I don't think that was intentional in any way, shape, or form.
No.
The show is not that smart. But it made me think that somebody on that staff might have been thinking about that.
Babies like unicorns and sharp pointy things. Let's put sharp pointy unicorns on this mobile. That was the thought process.
I've always depended on the kindness of unicorns.
But Mr. Gold's shop, it's just Gold?
Gold's. It's Mr. Gold.
Mr. Gold.
So his shop would be Gold's.
Robbie's shop is kind of...
Daddy's shop.
is kind of a menagerie of, like... I don't want to say MacGuffin, because it's not a MacGuffin. But
Chekhov's.
It's like a menagerie of, like...
Chekhov's.
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs,
is the word I want.
Okay.
I couldn't think of it for a second, because I'm too caffeinated.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool if you like kind of poke around and look that there'll be stuff from other episodes, previous episodes, future episodes.
Yeah, having watched the series before, there was one thing in there that I'm going to say what it is, but I'm not going to say what it's in reference to for our listeners. The tea set.
Okay.
That gives me something to look forward to because there's a whole bunch of episodes that deal with that subject.
Yeah, and if you're a smart little cookie and you want to pause it and probably turn up the brightness on your TV, because it's always very dimly lit, you can see some cool stuff in there.
You can.
And conjecture on future episodes, perhaps.
Or
Or reflect
dead ends.
on past episodes. Or hope that, maybe the show will give you something to look at other than the background.
So... I'm trying to think, because I think there was something else about... Okay, no, we were watching this episode together, and something that really annoyed me, kind of going back to the whole part about the mother giving her first son up to save the farm.
Yeah.
Before we hear any of this, we hear her talking about how she wants the son that she does have to get married so that they can have a dowry... to save the farm.
It's the grain merchant's daughter.
Yeah, the grain merchant's
I remember
daughter.
stupid details from this episode all the time. I'm sorry.
Because the stupid details keep you invested instead of the main ones.
Yeah. That way madness lies.
These people don't understand how serfs work.
Yeah. They don't
and farm
understand.
folk.
They don't understand how love or marriage worked as a function for like
many
ever
years
until like the past 80.
Okay, so when people ask if I support traditional marriage, my typical response tends to be if it's for the acquisition of land, sure.
Yeah. You
Because-
don't want to know the goats Dennis had to pay my parents. So
Totes
many
your goats,
totes of goats.
boats of goats,
Boats of goats.
gloat your goats. This is what happens when one of us is caffeinated and one of us is just running on ginger ale and ibuprofen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But
Breakfast of champions.
yeah, he didn't pay my parents my dowry yet.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know.
Yeah, the show really doesn't get the whole thing. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against the whole, like, I want to get married for love and not riches bit.
That whole I want to get married for love and riches bit, which is what marriage is now.
Yeah, and then, you know, you get both, kind of.
But I hate when they do this in fantasy world and in fantasy historical worlds where they're like, look, you should marry this person. It will be good for our family. It'll help us. And they go, but I don't love him, which is the thing that Disney has sold for a really long time. And I get it. You want to marry for love. But here's the thing. In the context of that history, you have to do what's right for those you love right now, not a potential future where you might love someone. You love your family, and you want your family to be able to, like, eat and have a place to live. So maybe you should suck it up a little bit and marry someone who could help out your family.
And if we're going with historical accuracy, the whole getting married to the grain merchant's daughter would not have been a discussion. It would have happened.
Yeah.
And the grain merchant and them would have combined assets and had a huge farm and all
Yeah,
lived
that's
together.
kind of what they did with Abigail at the end.
Yes. That happens on a smaller scale, just like it does on a larger scale. And, I mean, romance is fine. If you want to tell your romance story, go ahead. I just don't like that they have that plot going in the fantasy world on top of what's happening in Storybrooke.
That he's leaving his wife for someone else.
And
then he doesn't.
yeah,
He stands her up.
it's... If you've ever been in the situation where you're on the precipice of divorce or thinking about seeing other people...
Oh, you know I've been there.
You know I've been there. We've been down this road before.
I say sarcastically, she says genuinely.
Uh-huh. The show doesn't really get it, and I know that you want to go for, like, your Hollywood kind of finish on those matters, but it gets really clunky when you want to show parallels with your unhappy love life, but one has a lot worse consequences than the other.
Yeah.
It's very uneven, and I'm going to go back to Cinderella,
Okay.
where the choices she had to make in both the Fantasyland and in Storybrooke were perfectly mirrored and were foils of each other. That kind of situation sort of had, like, an equal ramification in both worlds. This one didn't.
Yeah.
And to say, like, we, the audience, know that if him and Snow White get together, it would kind of help with the undoing of the curse. And them not being together does, in fact, affect a lot of people. But if you don't have that knowledge, it just comes across as
You're
like...
essentially rooting for a divorce.
Yeah, you're rooting for a divorce, you're rooting for white people drama.
To a woman who isn't bad. Like,
No,
she's
Catherine
fine.
is great.
Like, his wife is fine, and she's trying. She's like, I made you cranberry muffins that used to be your favorite. I am showing you pictures of our life together. I invited inviting a bunch of friends over to the house. Being an introvert, I would not be down for that. But
That's the worst that you do.
yeah. she's trying, and he's just like, but I also feel his end of this just doesn't feel right.
Okay. You know that pin that we put?
Yeah.
We're taking that
Let's
out.
unpin it. I can't do that at all.
I can. That's why I exploit the hell out of it. We need to talk about David's actions in this whole episode. Not as charming as David.
Oh, when he goes into Mr. Gold's shop and he's like, charming. He's like playing with a mobile.
That, again, okay, cool. That was another thing that made me laugh.
Funny.
That was very funny.
David's playing with the mobile, and Mr. Gold just goes, charming. And he's like, what? He's like, the mobile. Isn't it charming?
Oh, God.
Oh, God, you're so cute, Robbie.
So, I don't necessarily hate David's character, but I don't like him.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the things that he does are semi-unrealistic, contrived, and
Dickish.
stalkery. Dickish and stalkery.
Yeah. I can't garner enough caring either way for him. Good, bad, or neutral. Like, okay. We all know... I feel like we all know how this is going to end, and I wish that the show would just take it out behind the barn and put a bullet in its head and make the story end. I know it's not, because it's TV, and they gotta drag this out for seasons.
7 of them.
But I just, every time it's on him and Mary's love story, I'm like, we know how this ends. We know how this ends. You're Disney. You're not gonna not have this be a happy ending. Put a bullet in its head. Old Yeller this bitch storyline.
Disney, you did it once.
Yeah, I mean...
You did it with Bambi's mom, too.
They did it with Old Yeller. That's a Disney movie.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
So, I don't know. There were parts of this episode that were good. Robbie Carlyle is always good. The
Daddy
2 jokes
Carlisle's
from Emma
fine.
is always good.
Yeah, they were good. It made me not hate Emma as much, because I think there is even a part in this where, like, Henry is talking to her and she is, like, done with all of this.
He got a little sass, too. I kind of liked the little Henry sass, because she's like, what, you think, like, just reminding him of his past by reading him the story will work? And he's like, it worked before.
And he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
So I feel like Regina raised him right.
Yeah, he's got a little of that Regina, like, stank on him.
I love it.
I just was gonna say something really gross, and I'm not.
No, please leave him alone.
Good. Yeah, no, he's a child. He's just a child.
So, how funny is it seeing Christian Grey in this series, knowing what we know about 50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah.
And the everything he does? Mm-hmm. And the everything he says?
Yeah. He's, I don't want to spoiler anything about his character that I already know, but...
Yeah, no, we will get to that.
Listen, I know Jamie Dornan isn't Christian Grey. He is not the character. I feel the same about him and Dakota Johnson about Kristen Stewart,
yeah.
And Robert Pattinson being saddled with Twilight as their flagship.
Yes.
Because I've seen Dakota Johnson in good things. Don't think I've seen Jamie Dornan in anything else. Maybe one or two things.
And
I feel like I have. I just can't remember what.
I don't want to, like, delegate to him being, Christian Grey by default.
But God bless him.
But it's really funny to think about when you're watching Once Upon a Time.
Whenever he's on screen, he's fun to make fun of. Just because it's easy. It's simple. And mindless.
And you know what? He is pretty easy on the eyes. Not my type, but...
I like his hair.
He has the best hair. He's a lot better than fucking James the Shepherd.
With his bad wig. He had a very bad bowl cut wig, and it was just unfortunate.
He was Becky with the bad hair.
He was. What's his name? Jay-Z would not leave Beyonce for him.
No. So... That episode happened.
Anything else noteworthy happen?
I think everything that happened in this episode,
He ends
here's the thing.
up sticking with Abigail in the end.
He does. Normally, what I would do is I would do something like talk about King Midas, since this is the first time we're introduced to him. But you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save that for another time.
There's not much noteworthy that he does other than
He
remember what
exists.
happened to Frederick, which was kind of funny.
That was very
Toss
funny.
away line. They're taking his glove off, and he's like, "Careful! Remember what happened to Frederick."
Yeah.
I wish they would just pan to a guy looking surprised and golden.
Oh
Like-
my god.
But yeah, I don't think there was much else in this episode.
No, and he comes back, so I'll talk about King Midas then, and some of the other imagery that's associated with him. Apples. How many?
Apples. 2.5.
I'm giving it a solid 2.
Yeah, I can go for a 2.
Yeah, mainly because if I give it 3 with a bite, I would have to go through the process of eating that apple, and that's going to give me indigestion.
I'd rather give it 2. There was a little bit redeeming to it, but not enough to make me look up from my phone more than like a half a dozen times.
No. So I do want to take some time before we sign off here. I have no idea what platforms people typically use to listen to Happy Ever After Party, but we are on iTunes now.
Yep.
I said that 2 episodes ago, but you can find us on iTunes, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Google Play Music, you can find us on YouTube, either our own personal channel or Insensitive Networks. So whatever's going to be easier for you.
Wherever good podcasts are sold.
Wherever good podcasts are available, we're going to be there. We'll hear for you guys.
Rate, review, follow,
Subscribe.
Subscribe. Do whatever you want. But
Actually, the only reason why I'm doing this plugin is because I'm actually genuinely curious what platform works better for people. So, in all sincerity, please leave me comments and talk about what you want us to talk about.
Maybe movie suggestions. So once we get off of this, we can find a good movie or two.
Here's the thing. Once Upon a Time is 22 episodes per season. After we do episode 11, we're going to do something special.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to talk about
I'm going to make Sam watch Ever After. Finally.
I know.
I can get some Drew Barrymore, Angelica Houston in my life.
I can use so much Angelica Houston.
Oh my god, you think Regina has the I will fire your manager? Like, oh, she brings all of it to that movie. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm going to have to take notes. I'm going to have to do graphs and charts and color code.
Oh my god.
And there's going to be so many Post-it notes. Post-it notes all over the place.
I have the ones with the arrows on it. So, I'm going to put Post-it note arrows on your Post-it notes.
This room is going to be that Charlie Day, meme with just...
Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia.
Oh, God. So, the other thing that I might mention, if people are interested in this, when I talked about the Hansel and Gretel movies, I mentioned Army of Darkness.
Ooh.
I kind of want to talk about Army of Darkness.
Oh my god.
And it's my show, so I can do that.
You could do Army of Darkness, Cabin in the Woods, that whole kind of mythos thing.
Yes,
that'd be
I could.
fun, and I could say stuff if you want me to say stuff.
I would like you to be a part of that. So, but...
Because it's horror. That's my baby.
Horror is what I hold dear to me, and it's kind of funny because I will be so much more offended by a bad horror film than any other genre. And I don't mean a badly made B movie. I'm talking about an actual Truth or Dare.
Lazy.
Yeah.
You gotta watch Assassination Nation.
I need to.
You need to get on that. Because I watched it the other night. It's so good.
And I also need to see Natalie Wynn's new video. I haven't seen it yet.
Natalie Wynn, ContraPoints. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh my god, if we can get Natalie Wynn on here.
Dreams. I am actually going to have 2 people join me at some point.
Ooh.
Because they offhandedly said when I had like my pleather red jacket on that I looked like Emma Swan. And they didn't know that this is what I do.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys know that I talk about that like pretty consistently, right? And they're like, no. And they are very bitchy queens, so they would fit right in.
As long as you're not talking about Dennis.
No.
Good.
Well,
no husbands allowed.
no.
No dogs allowed.
No dogs allowed.
Thank you.
I'm a baritone. All right, so you know what we say. This episode is boring as hell. We're gonna old yeller
But there's
it right
one
here.
I really like coming up soon, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Is it the one with Brad Dourif?
Yes. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Brad Dourif.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
From One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, see, you know him as that. I know him as Chucky.
Yeah, that's who Dennis knew him as, too.
Yeah.
He was like, oh yeah, Brad Dourif.
Or
He's
Grima
from
Wormtongue.
And I'm like, oh, he's Billy Bibbit from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
You know who else I forget is in that movie? I keep forgetting that Danny DeVito's in that movie.
Yep. He's barely in it, though. He's barely like a minor character in
and
it.
He's
bigger in the
borderline
book.
nonverbal. So
I really love that book.
I really
real
like
good.
that movie. You know, if you haven't removed that poisoned comb or undone your bodice yet, I certainly feel like it.
It's so tight, you guys.
This episode certainly made me want to eat a poison apple.
It made me want to eat a poison comb.
Yeah. Might not be the end.
It might not be happy.
But you're always welcome to this party.
Wickety what?
Take care.
Wickety.